Impulsivity, irrational decision-making, and an increased sense of independence and peer influence are all very distinctive behaviors of teenage years. However, why does this always happen? This is because of the adolescent brain. Uncovering the Adolescent Brain by Jaden Archangel. To understand adolescent brain development, we must first understand that both genetic and environmental factors interact with each other. To start off with, genetics refers to our genes, which code for the protein molecules that build our body. Genes provide instructions for many processes in the brain during development, such as synaptic pruning and myelination, which strengthens neurons to develop stronger cognitive skills like decision-making. Synaptic pruning is a process in the brain where old neural connections are forgotten and removed, while used neural connections are strengthened to improve brain efficiency. Additionally, genes can also code for the onset of the development of the prefrontal cortex, which controls decision and impulse control, the hippocampus, which is responsible for learning and memory, and the amygdala, which is the center of processing emotions in the brain. Next are environmental factors of brain development. These refer to every non-genetic influence, such as socioeconomic status, nutrition, and important relationships in one's life. A very important environmental factor in one's brain development is parents. The values of parents, such as political views and faith, can influence their children's attitudes towards these subjects. This is because the prefrontal cortex, which oversees personality and decision-making, develops during this time period, which causes adolescents to seek identity. Another thing worth noting is that genetic and environmental factors never work alone. Environmental influences can trigger or block genetic expression. One major environmental factor is lifestyle habits. These lifestyle habits can greatly influence the cognitive functioning of teenagers. First is sleep. Quality sleep in adolescence is generally associated with higher general cognitive ability and better academic performance, while shorter sleep durations lead to impairments in memory and attention. Now onto screen time. Different mediums of screen time have varied relationships with teenagers' cognitive development, but generally, excessive screen time is linked with negative outcomes. An example of this is passive TV viewing and the overuse of texting and video calling, which are linked with lower language ability and verbal intellect. Lastly, another important lifestyle habit to many are sports and physical activities. Physical activities that contain mental rotation skills, such as wrestling and gymnastics, can benefit cognitive development through improved inhibitory control and self-regulation. As teenagers undergo adolescence, their sense of identity is guided by questions like, who am I, where do I fit in, and who should I be? These self-questions can be answered through one's personal values, cultural norms, and our past experiences. According to psychologist and theorist Erik Erikson, teenagers undergo the psychosocial stage of identity versus role confusion. This is where teenagers attempt to refine their identity or become confused about who they are. This is because adolescents feel the need to accomplish something personally meaningful, which is why they try new things like the way they dress, who they hang out with, new beliefs, and new hobbies. It is also important to note that this period is a time where we become increasingly sensitive to how others perceive us. This explains why self-esteem declines during adolescence, and it also explains why self-issues of race and sexuality become extremely noticeable. Adolescents clearly depend on social relationships, which is why parent-child and peer relationships change as individuals undergo this biological process. An evolutionary development that humans have is that the brain must redevelop itself during adolescence and transform our relationships with others to keep up as we age. Since we get older, the brain recognizes that we need to stop relying on parents and caregivers, leading us to create these new relationships with our peers. With this growing peer influence and need for peer approval, teens start to act just the same way that their peers do, such as dress the same, talk the same, and much more. However, this dependence can lead to having to face peer pressure, where adolescents sacrifice their principles just to have connections. Now you may be wondering why adolescents are very impulsive and moody. Well, this is due to significant changes in the limbic system during adolescence, where teenagers will tend to face more intense emotional responses, as this system is the structure in our brain associated with emotions. Children undergoing adolescence also release more dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter for pleasure. This is mostly released when they do new things that are cool or mature to them. This can be things like speeding on the road, taking narcotics, and going out to parties. Now, let's delve deeper into social and educational environments, which influence cognitive development during adolescence. Many scientists believe that neighborhoods in which children grow up in have a strong effect on shaping their brain structure and, in turn, behavior and well-being. Neighborhoods specifically can differ in the availability of resources and level of crime/pollution. Because of this, children growing up in different neighborhoods can have varying cognitive abilities. In fact, research suggests that children in lower quality neighborhoods have a lower academic performance than children growing up in supportive neighborhoods. Another important social environment for adolescents is school. School can help build strong relationships with teachers and friends, and extracurricular activities within the school can benefit a child's well-being and cognitive functions, such as memory, reasoning, and problem solving. Because parental warmth and support in these social environments are another important factor in the cognitive development of adolescents, let's go over the roles and responsibilities that are expected of these parents to foster healthy brain development. Parents and caregivers can foster healthy brain development in teenagers by providing them opportunities to practice using their brain. For example, adults can help them organize their thoughts, analyze situations to create smart decisions, and help them explore their personal values. Secondly, adults and caregivers should acknowledge the behaviors of adolescents, as well as understand their impulsivity rather than resorting to harsh discipline. This is because adults should treat teenagers with kindness and respect to avoid self-esteem issues and recognize their desire to demand privacy. Although it's very important for parents to give their teenagers space, it's not okay to let them push themselves away. Parental involvement with adolescents that are caring and supportive has shown to lessen the likelihood of a child engaging in high-risk behavior. Finally, adults everywhere, such as teachers, coaches, guidance counselors, and faith leaders, should make sure youth has positive connections to foster healthy brain development. Young people with strong supportive social relationships tend to be emotionally healthier. Although many adolescents receive enough support to foster a healthy brain development, this isn't always the case for some adolescents. Many adverse experiences during adolescence and childhood can impact the brain and behavior of adolescents. Adverse childhood experiences include abuse, neglect, exposure to violence, parental depression or addiction, and poverty. All of these are toxic stressors that can impact lifelong changes in learning and behavior. Some behavioral changes that are seen in adolescents who have experienced these adverse experiences include poor emotional regulation, risk behavior, learning difficulties, and struggling to form healthy relationships. In addition, adverse childhood experiences can also lead to changes in gene expressions associated with brain development, cognition, and systems associated with physical and mental health. Now, let's talk about why many mental health disorders emerge during adolescence. One reason as to why many mental health disorders emerge during this time period is because of the heightened emotion and lack of impulse control in teenagers. This can lead to mental health disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression, which tend to emerge in the late teen years or early 20s. Another mental health disorder that may emerge during adolescence is anxiety. Anxiety can manifest itself very easily in the teenage brain And one factor of this is social media. This is because social media prompts upward social comparison, which leads to feelings of inadequacy. Another factor that may contribute to mental health disorders is sleep deprivation. Teenagers are typically geared to fall asleep late and get up late. Sleep deprivation can hinder the brain's ability to learn and recover. Currently, many health awareness programs are trying to bring teenagers to awareness to these topics. And now, moving on to our last topic, how drugs and substance abuse alter brain development and affect teenagers during adolescence. Now, youth substance abuse is actually very common and dangerous, as our brain is going through critical periods of development during this time period. Since drugs and dangerous substances directly interfere with the brain, there are many significant consequences. Drugs and substances can directly interfere with our neural activity by slowing it down, stimulating it, or disrupting the brain's internal chemistry by interfering with our brain's neurotransmitters or chemical messengers. As said before, because dopamine levels are extremely high during this period, adolescents have a higher chance of getting addicted. An example of a substance that adolescents might abuse is alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. This means that it slows down neural activity. This impairs impulse control and influences poor judgment. It is essential that parents and caregivers can help adolescents with this issue through open conversations and seeking help early from healthcare professionals. Thank you for watching this short film, and always remember, adolescence is a crucial period in which we must take seriously.